And
Oh, as long as we can download our film in 2 seconds, Ian, that's all that really matters.
well, you nailed it. You nailed it there. I say I don't want to. I don't want to risk my life, and it is that serious for the sake of a faster download. Yeah, 80% of internet Wi-Fi use is for social media, entertainment, as a general thing. And funnily enough, I was reading something about 6G this morning, whatever that is or will be, and the industry is really quite confused about that, I think. And he was saying there that the current use of 5G in America has been mainly in sports stadiums and concerts, and the biggest download of terabytes was for a Taylor Swift concert, apparently. Now, why you can't just sit and watch a musical event?
Exactly. You're there
I
to
don't know.
perform, and there to be on your bloody phone, right?
Exactly. Or to look at all the different camera shots from around the baseball ground or the football ground or whatever. No, but maybe I'm just from a different generation.
Maybe I'm born in the wrong bloody generation. I look at it sometimes and I think, what the hell are you doing? Like, put your goddamn phone down and just be in the moment and enjoy what's in front of you. Take it.
I agree there, but I see people of similar age to me walking down the streets like this. So it's not just but it is there where I think it's captured a lot more than that. Maybe the people of my age will put the phone down when they get back into home, whereas the kids sit there on it all the time. Talking to their mates.
We know. We get, as the consumer, as the end person who gets this, we're hit with the marketing side of it. It's in is one big lie, right? It's to create, it's a fantasy, it's an image. It's like, well, this is going to give you all of the things that you want. It's going to make your life easier, and et cetera, et cetera. But what's not told is that these things are massively toxic to the human body. Massively toxic. There's so much radiation coming off this thing.
Yeah.
And our body is an antenna, right? It picks up on everything that's around it. We're standing in a sea of energy and frequencies, and different levels of frequencies in the body in different ways. There are harmonious ones and there are not so harmonious ones. And this is definitely in the case of not a harmonious frequency. Now, obviously, I'm a big hypocrite here because I carry this thing around me everywhere. But I'm aware of it, and I'm definitely somebody who puts this down and keeps it away from me as much as I possibly can, without it interfering with daily life. This is not understood by most people, and there's a reason why. Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, and all these other tech guys, there's a reason why they don't let their kids have these things or use them. Because they know the dangers. They understand.
And I think the dangers are even deeper than that, actually, because if you listen to someone like Jarvis, I'm trying to remember what his first name is now. He's a psychologist focusing on children. And there's one or two really good interviews that he's got online, and also articles and research papers. And he's saying that the psychological effects of too much screen time, particularly on young children, are extremely serious. He goes into a lot of detail. When people say that it's improving education, that's not backed up by research. Not in the slightest. Jarvis, in one of his interviews, has said the effects on the frontal cortex, when a child has, or a young person has too much screen time, I'm not sure how we define too much, of course, is very similar to the same scans that they see when they have working with cocaine addicts. So that's potentially very serious. And where does that leave us in that? Because that's a serious addiction, and so it's a mental addiction, not just the exposure to the radiation, important though that is, but the longer term effects are potentially that addictive behavior. And we've all seen that with all sorts of people that we've known in our life through alcohol and other drugs and smoking and so on over the years, and now it's come to the mobile phones.
Yeah, because it's essentially it targets the dopamine receptors, right? Because it's a release of dopamine. Because it's I think there's like a reward. So in casinos, for example, the reason why slot machines are so addictive to most people is because of that reward and then they take away. So you don't know what's going to happen next, right? It's the constant. Oh, I got a little bit, and then it's taken away, and it's just back and forth. It's that sort of element within the phones, right? Because you're refreshing the screen, and you've got all these different things that you can do, and that just targets the dopamine in the frontal cortex, and that's probably what triggers the same receptors cocaine would trigger. It makes perfect sense. And I remember, actually, I'll tell you a story. So when my niece was around 2 years old, so we had an iPad in the house, but I made sure that she didn't go near it. And there was a very short period of time, maybe about 2 or 3 weeks, where we allowed her to use the iPad. It was silly, but we just allowed her to use it. And she was 2 years old, and she worked out how to use it very, very effectively. She was watching YouTube videos like, children and all that stuff.
Goodness.
The content that she was watching was just, oh my God, it was like, it was so mind numbing and so just, I can't even describe it. It was awful. And so I put a stop to it, but I could see the effects that it was having, because when I took it away from her, oh my God, it was like I'd done something terribly wrong to her.
Yeah.
Just brain's effect, like it was just the refreshing, the constant clicking. She loved all of that, and that really got her going.
Yeah, I did read that scrolling is the word I'm looking for. The scrolling, that gives you if you find what you want when you're scrolling down to that gives you your reward in effect. Sometimes, we may wish it was never invented, because that is one of the addictive patterns, the scrolling, which and that has changed computing technology, probably as a single thing more than almost anything else. When I look at my first online experiences, it was all words, based on that old basic computer thing of DOS, that sort of thing. It'd just be words, usually green words on a dark screen, and that's changed dramatically because of that ability to have the touch sensitive screens, and you scroll and you flick, and you can have 3 or 4 screens up at the same time. All those things, they pull somebody right into it. So I think that it's something that we are missing. Yeah, and we need to start thinking about that much more seriously. Because my personal view is that we have damaged our current batch of teenagers, really, because they're the first people that were brought up with that sort of facility are probably the 10-year-olds of today, because the 4G came out around about 2010. It was phased in over several years in different countries, of course, but round about that time we started getting that ability to do that scrolling, and so it's that generation that has known it from almost from birth. My sister's grandson, who is now about 15, again, he that wasn't in when he was a tiny little boy, but it's been in his life for many, many years. And he happily walks around with his mobile phone switched on in his trouser pocket, happily radiating his sperm, of course. And the one thing that is almost universally agreed is that sperm is negatively affected by radiofrequency radiation. That's and the only good thing is that men do reproduce, keep generating sperm as we go along through life. The girls don't with their eggs, and there's a similar effect. It's not quite so readily accepted that it damages the eggs. But listen to Barry Trower talking about that, there is definitely an effect. So are we going to be breeding a generation that can't breed anymore? Again, Barry says currently 5 generations down the line we'll all be sterile. So it's something, It's what I call unintended consequences, and we don't look sufficiently widely at the possibility of unintended consequences with so many things that we do, and that is where we are missing a huge amount of research. And I think one of the other things I notice is that there's a myth. I mentioned Matt Warman a little while ago, and Matt Warman, he was the one who gave the go-ahead when he was minister for the rollout of 5G. But what a lot of people seem to think that in order to, the politicians particularly, regulators, people in councils, that in order to make a decision on whether or not we should roll out this equipment, for example, the science that you need is the same as the science to prove it in the first place. We don't need that level. You can take an ethical decision based on one case. I often liken it to swans. We used to think in this country, centuries ago, we used to think all swans were white, until somebody went to, I think it was Australia, and discovered black swans. Now, they didn't have to bring back every single black swan in order to prove that swans are not always white. They only needed to bring back one. Say, look what we found out there. This is the swan, and it's not painted. Just check the feathers. And it's very similar. To make a political decision, you just need concern. And there's a Danish lawyer wrote a superb paper around about 2015.
Really, that's how it works.
Yeah,
you need to be right once. Yeah. And in your case, there's multiple times that we're right. This is dangerous.
For all sorts of different reasons, we've been discussing the psychological approach, the children's approach. And one thing to remember about children, although we might call my sister's grandson a young adult, but human beings are children. They're developing until their early 20s, and I could argue
it doesn't stop developing
everything. And even then, we're learning more about brain plasticity. So I can still change and develop as well at my age. But particularly that first 20, 25 years, the development, the changes in that child as they grow to that young adulthood are enormous. You know, animals don't go through that. You know, 10 minutes after it's born, an animal is standing up. You know, it has to be able to do that. We don't, because we've got that difference of the nurture, the caring aspects. You know, that's part of humanity, and there are not many animals that share that. There may be one or two. It goes on for a little bit longer, but not as long as it does with humans at all. So it's you know, it introduces all sorts of other questions around those things. Now,